going to show you is for measuring tympanograms. Tympanograms measure the movement of the eardrum. So what I do is I select a probe tip that measures the size of the ear canal, and I have selected one that is for my ear canal size. And then I place that probe tip in my ear, and I'll show you what happens as soon as I put that in. This tympanogram is normal. The tympanogram measures the movement of the eardrum by applying pressure to the eardrum and then pulling the eardrum back out. The peak of this tympanogram indicates the maximum compliance of my eardrum, which is 0.44 on this measurement, which is normal. I've seen a typical range for children is generally between 0.2 and up. Some kids will have a very compliant eardrum, especially if they've had tubes in their ears. But that's something that if that number is less than 0.2, that can indicate that there's fluid behind the eardrum. So when the middle ear space has some negative pressure where the eardrum's pulled in or there's fluid filled inside, this tympanogram will show that the compliance or the movement of the eardrum is not normal. Okay, in another one of our offices, we have another machine that also does tympanograms. So you can see they look very different. This machine is not portable. And I have left some results from a patient I had today on the screen so you can see the difference between my tympanogram and this patient's. The measurements are shown to the right side, where before in the other room they were along the bottom of the measurement. But if you look to the left, you can still see that it has that peak that comes up and then down, showing the maximum compliance of this eardrum to be 1.2 milliliters of H2O is what the measurement is. But my compliance, if you recall, was 0.44, I believe, and so this one is 1.2. That's significantly more. However, it's still within the normal range. 1.5 or greater is considered a hypermobile or very flexible tympanic membrane. The tympanic membrane or the eardrum, it can be very flexible and not have any impact on hearing or anything. The patient can live their whole life never knowing that they have a hypermobile tympanic membrane and be just fine. So it's not something in and of itself that's of great concern. But this tympanogram is also normal. Now I'm also going to show you my tympanogram again on this machine so you can see a little bit of normal variability. When I do take this measurement again, it should vary very slightly from what I did in the other room, so let me go ahead and do that. I'll need to remain quiet as this happens, otherwise I get a very messy tracing. Alright, so my ear canal volume measured on this machine is 1.1 and my peak pressure is 10. I believe the other side was a negative 11, so very slight variation there. And still showing compliance of 0.4. This one doesn't go out to the hundredths place, but that's okay. That's still an acceptable. Many of them really don't, so it's okay if it doesn't have that much specificity. Now, moving on from tympanograms, I do want to show you one of our booths. This is a small audiometric suite. It's a single-walled booth, so that means that the patient sits inside of the booth and I sit outside of the booth as I complete the testing right here. This audiometer is actually very new. It's only about a year old, so it has some very nice features. And as you can see, there's a nice big screen up top. The frequency testing is in the center, and that can be adjusted. And then the frequency, the intensity level is also adjustable, and that's adjusted by using a knob here. When a sound is presented, then that sound is presented by pushing this button here. And here in my other office, I have a double-walled audiometric suite. It has a room for the patient where they will sit and be tested. And then through the window on the other side is where I will go, and it is also inside of a soundproof room. So on this side, I can also sit in a very quiet space to do my testing. And we have a double-walled booth, which provides a little more insulation for the testing so that my voice won't cross over. And here you can see I have another audiometer, very similar, but the screen is a little bit different. It's not quite as new, but I really love this audiometer. It's quite nice. The responsiveness of it is really great. But you can see here we also have 2 channels, which is very important for testing, especially with children. And you can see that it has the same buttons as the other booth, where you can change the frequency here. And I can also adjust the intensity of the sound. But there are lots of buttons here, and these buttons all help to identify, in fact, if we come to the top, it's a little easier to see, the test type, whether we're using tones or speech, the stimulus type, which is the tone or the frequency, the microphone, so that you can do speech testing, or some external or internal recorded information. So words that are recorded can be presented to the patient. This is a live microphone where I speak to the patient. Next we have the transducers. The transducers are headphones that go over the outside of the ear. Bone conduction testing, which goes right behind the ear and stimulates the bone, and therefore giving sound directly to the cochlea and bypassing the middle ear entirely. Speakers, which are often used for infants and children up to about age 2.5. Insert earphones, which are a foam earplug that goes into the ear canal. And a high frequency headphone, which is a specialized headphone. Not a lot of audiologists use this at this time. There's a lot of variability with the testing, so most of what you'll be seeing will be coming through the speaker, the bone conduction, the phone, or the inserts as well. The sound is going to be directed ear specifically, which is ideal, or sometimes you can present to both ears, and when you're using the speakers, both ears are hearing the sound as well. So this is an audiometer that has 2 channels. So one ear could be hearing something through the bone conduction, and the other ear will be hearing it through the insert earphone. So it's important when I'm testing to make sure that I know which ear that I'm testing. These are the headphones that I use regularly. They're called supraoral headphones. That means they go on the outside of the ear, and the sound comes through. They're pretty standard looking, but it's very important that these headphones are calibrated specifically for use in this particular booth with this particular audiometer. I also have a bone conduction oscillator, which is basically a little headband that has a piece that goes very snugly against the bone behind the ear, right on the mastoid. I also have, oh, here I am. I also use speakers, and those are used for young children up to about age 2.5. Inside of this box is a visual reinforcer, a little bunny, and it will light up and turn on. On the other side I have a little sheep, and that will also light up and turn on, and he'll walk and he'll make little sounds. The last audiometer I'm going to show you is a portable audiometer. It is, it's quite old, as you can tell, but it still functions very well. I use it regularly with children who I need to sit right next to. So if I'm not able to go on the other side of the window to work with, say, a 3.5-year-old, then I can sit right beside them and use this machine. And everything works essentially the same. I have a dial that sets the frequency and another dial that sets the intensity level that I'm working with. Sometimes I'll use this machine for some practice before going over to the other side. The final test I'd like to show you today is actually distortion product otoacoustic emissions, or DPOAEs. DPOAEs are frequency specific, which means I'm testing a very specific range within the ear, and they measure the response of the outer hair cells within the ear to the sound that is presented by the machine. So I'm going to be measuring my own ear again, and I'm measuring 2,000 to 8,000 hertz, so relatively high frequency. And I'll need to sit very quietly as the sounds are presented to my ear and measured from my ear. There's a noise floor that you can see along the bottom that's a dark gray color, and the noise floor goes up if I'm noisy. So I'll be very quiet initially, and then I'll make some loud sounds, and you can see the response change to the test. Now I'm switching over to my other ear, and we'll see a little comparison of the two ears side by side. Now you can see, as an adult, I've sat very quietly, but as I coughed there, you could see a jump in the noise floor. With children, especially fussy babies or toddlers who want to speak to their parents, I use a distraction activity to try to help them avoid making a noise, but usually the noise floor is present, a little higher, quite a bit higher than this. And as long as those check marks are measuring a nice strong response above the noise floor, then that's acceptable. And that indicates that the outer hair cells, which are in the cochlea, are functioning normally. When I'm looking for the specific measurements, then I scroll down on my machine and I can see the response, and I can see what frequency was tested, the distortion product intensity, the noise floor, and the signal to noise difference between the response and the noise floor. And it gives me those nice check marks are really nice and easy. It's a good visual for parents as well, so I can say, oh, look, all of those check marks indicate that we have a good response. And then I can go back and forth between the ears, and I can show the right and the left. So my left ear, there wasn't a response at 8,000 hertz, but the plug was falling out of my ear a little bit, and I couldn't adjust it because I'm holding the camera. This concludes our tour of my office and some of the equipment I use every day. If you have a question about the ear or the equipment that I use or any of the audiological testing we discussed, let me know.